everyone. So today I want to talk a little bit about the history of the Mormons, officially the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So I hope you noticed in the reading that what we have going on with the Mormons, so number one, again, we have a single author who, again, thinks that this religion is an improvement on the prior ones. So we've seen, Judaism, potentially an improvement on Egyptian monotheism. Christianity thinks it's an improvement on Judaism. Islam thinks it's an improvement on Judaism and Christianity. Mormonism thinks it is an addition to some extent, Judaism and Christianity. Very few people in the early 19th century knew anything about Muslims in America, and what they did know really had to do with like the Barbary Coast and diplomacy. Anyway, so American religion just skip over Islam altogether for that time period. So Joseph Smith was incredibly charming and just an amazing storyteller. And he would like swoop into town, and he'd like get out of his carriage, with his horse, and turn to some stranger and say, Orson Pratt, you called me. And Orson Pratt's like, what? It's like, what do you need? I'm here. Yeah, I heard you calling me. So it was incredibly effective. And so this religion, it's been called the All-American religion, right? It is truly, along with rock and roll and cars and blue jeans, one of America's truly only successful international exports. But it's very, very American. So here we go. The Book of Mormon. Now, Joseph Smith loved the Hebrew Scriptures, loved them. He liked Jesus, not saying he didn't, but his concerns were really very, very close to the Israelite patriarchs. So his goals looked a lot more like, King David and Solomon and, that crowd. And he wanted to sort of create a new Israel. Okay. And the goal, not the goal, but the sort of raison d'etre behind that is that he took a sentence very seriously, and the Lord of hosts shall reign gloriously in Jerusalem and in Zion. So he proposed that there were two holy places. So Jerusalem for the Jews and an American Zion for the Mormons. And that God is going to uphold his promises to the Jews-ish. Slight variations, but so he's actually, in some senses, much nicer to Judaism. He didn't really know any. He knew some Jews. Okay, I take that back. And actual Jews than most people in the 19th century. So he's got that going for him, right? All right. So the Book of Mormon. The Book of Mormon is rather complicated. So let's break it down. Now, I think we all think, just casually, if we think this is true at all, that, if there was a Garden of Eden, it's probably somewhere in the Middle East. Well, he's like, no. So here we go. All right. So Israel, America. Okay. So according to Smith, Eden is in America. And so from Adam through Noah take place in the United States. And then Noah leaves and he ends up in the Middle East. So now we're over here. So the Hebrew Bible stories continue from Noah, like, straight on down. But according to the Book of Mormon, sometime during Babylonian exile, which was 586 BCE, give or take, um, God talked to one of the Israelites and said, "Dude, get the hell out of here. Right? You're going into exile. It's going to be terrible. There's another place for you where you belong." And so this dude's name is Lehi, and he got into a boat with his family, and he went back to the United States. So now we're over here. So the Bible tells the story of what happens beginning in America, but then the rest of it takes place in Israel, ancient Israel. And the Book of Mormon tells the story of what happens to Lehi and his family in the United States. Now, it's a classic tale of the good brother and the bad brother, and Nephi is the good brother, and Levi's the bad brother, and they fight, and they amass armies, and terrible things go on. But the upshot is that the good guys lose. Okay? And prior to his death, right, Nephi writes the Book of Mormon, okay, everybody with me, and hides it in a mountain. And that is what Joseph Smith discovers, or says he discovers, in, it's published in 1830, right, the first Book of Mormon. So the good guys die off. The bad guys, I'm sorry about, I always apologize for racism. Sorry about this. So these guys are called the Lamanites for Lamon, and they become the Native Americans. Now, why does this matter, right? Why are the Mormons so interested in the Native Americans? It's like, well, it was a big question in the 19th century, right? Everybody wanted to know where the Native Americans came from. Because if you take, a literal, Protestant reading of the Bible, it's like, okay, we all descended from Adam and Eve, and they lived in Israel-ish. Where did all of these people come from? Because the Bible never addresses the Native Americans, never addresses these continents, never addresses, New Zealand, whatever. So it's like, well, how did they get here? And the Book of Mormon answers that question, right? How did they get here? It's like, well, they're Jews who forgot that they're Jews. So they're the chosen people, right? And so more prose for my friend Joseph here. He actually says, we are the ones who have to be grafted onto the chosen people. So it's the Christians, right, who need to ride the coattails of the Jews, and the Native Americans needed to be reminded how awesome they are, according to this worldview. Yeah. So that's the deal. And a couple of super interesting things. So much like David and Solomon, right? Everywhere the Mormons went, first thing they did was build a temple. And then the second thing they did was they tried to establish a theocracy, right? An autonomous rule. And some states were like, oh, no, you do not. And others were like, yeah, okay, within your territory, whatever. But the persecution for, number one, polygamy, and number two, block voting. So all the Mormons voted, and still kind of do, exactly alike. So if you have a lot of Mormons in your state, they can rig the election, right, in our contemporary parlance. Not rig, but they can swing it. Yeah. So a lot of states were like, oh, no, gone, right? And so Joseph Smith and his brother are shot to death while they're in a jail, right? They're caged in these cowards come in with masks on and they just shoot them like a, fish in a barrel. It's revolting. So after that, so Brigham Young becomes the next guy, and he's like, whoa, we got to get out of here. And so that's when the trek to Utah starts. Now, what's going on in Utah? Why Utah? It's like, well, number one, it's far away from anyone, in 1854. Number two, it has, what's it have? A salt lake. Who else has a salt lake? Israel. It's called the Dead Sea. So, two Zions, one in Jerusalem, one in America. The trek is actually called an Exodus, and both Smith and Brigham Young were understood to have the mantle of Moses. So they were leading the people out of, this terrible situation of slavery into a promised land. And what do both the early Israelites and the early Mormons have? They have theocracy, right? They set up shop in Utah, and there was nobody to bother them for a while. And number two, they have polygamy. Yeah, so did David, so did Solomon, so did all those guys. So there's a real mirroring, right, between Israelite religion, Mormonism, and this idea of two sacred spaces, two Moseses, right? Yeah, so that is what's going on there. Okay, thanks. Bye.